Yay. Well, we're coming into land, and you know what it means. Yes, it's time for the weekly Metaworld news. Yep, space shuttle arriving, self incumbent. Yep, whatever. Hello, everybody. I'm Mal Burns, and this is your weekly headlines on Metaworld News for the 21st of April, 2019. Now, you might be forgiven if you live in London here. Well, actually, indeed, in Wisconsin, it's actually the 21st of August. This
Yeah,
is not actually true, but the weather would suggest it is.
it feels it.
Um, yeah, I know, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're all thrown here. Self has got watery eyes. I think it's a hay fevery sort of thing. I woke up and I thought I'd gone blind because there was so much cake to be removed from the lids. Anyway, you don't want to know about that. In fact, you probably don't want to know how hot it is because I bet wherever you are, you're in an iceberg or something. Ah, dear, global warming or global cooling or global something. I don't know. But the whole week, of course, here has been included in climate protests all over London, stopping the traffic and everything else. And there have been masses, hundreds and hundreds of arrests. But oddly enough, I think there's only been barely half a dozen people who've been actually been charged with anything. And for the first half of the week, our local London mayor was supporting the protests. He's changed his mind now, apparently because he's been told what the figures are for um, losses in the shops and stuff like that. I don't give a monkeys. I don't. I think
Mm.
it's altogether rather good that people are actually very, very effectively drawing attention to what's going on day and night throughout the week, holiday weekend and the working week before it. And yes. And, just as a few people are getting worn out, a whole bunch of other people turn up thinking we want to put our voices in the mix. Anyway, enough of that. We're here with Meta World News, that's social worlds news, and virtual reality, human computer interfacing technology, etc., etc. My name is Mal Bones. You can follow me on Twitter at
and
twitter.com/malbones, all
virtual
one word,
reality, human computer
Malburns.
interfacing
And
technology,
we have an
etc.,
additional feed
etc.
at
My name
twitter.com/Meta World News, as in the title of this show. I'll be between those feeds. That's where you're going to get the headlines from. I'm also joined, of course, as ever, by James Atloud. Welcome, James.
Oh, thank you, Mal.
And James is responsible for multitasking behind the scenes, looking at the screens in front of his desk there, and switching camera angles and mixing all the things that you get to see at your end. And of course, he's here to comment on things too, and pull me out of the rabbit hole when I fall into it.
I'll try.
So, yeah, he tries, I forget. Never mind. So, you're wondering what that big screen was all about when I landed, came in, as it were. I presume we're seeing it again now. If we're not,
Yep.
that's a cue for James. It's a space shuttle on the side, however. It says Coachella or Conchella. And those figures at the bottom are not high fidelity avatars or anything like that. Those are actually real organic people with the mountains in the background or in the desert wherever the Coachella Festival is held. This is a stage. It's actually called the it's not
Sahara.
Safari. Sahara, that's it, Safari indeed. Yeah, it's known as the Sahara tent, although looking at the metallic ceiling, I don't think it doesn't look very tent like to me. Unless that's augmented too, but I don't think so. Um, Anybody attending this festival is able to download the Conchella app from for iOS, that's the iPhone, iPad, etc., and Android. And you could look through this while the performance goes on, and you would see different augmented reality sort of constructs being displayed with each band that came on stage. You know, there's actually different stuff for each band. I'm going to actually put that away now. Hopefully, it doesn't crash my machine. By the way, if you think we're late, we're not. We're just doing it again because we crashed. Okay. I'm not going to scroll down here. Apparently, we think that scrolling my screen may be interfering with the upload and destabilizing us. But basically, festival goers were sort of presented with a whole load of interesting stuff there. You can find a link to this article at vrscout.com. That's VR, the letters, and then scout as in Boy Scout. VRScout, well, one word, .com. And we're going to put that on the way before I start scrolling. Here's another one, Defrost, a VR series, the cold weathers, launching soon. It's actually in a couple of days. Again, I can't see the actual days. I know from when we did this a few minutes ago, it was, I think it's the 25th of April, which is barely 4 days away. Um, it's um, it's actually a virtual reality kind of cinema thing. It's going to be shown on a platform called Via VR. That's VEER, and the web address is via dot TV. And apparently it's about 12 5-minute episodes, which, all in all means the drama actually lasts about the length of a sort of a TV show or whatever. Find out more about this one at uploadvr.com. So all one word, uploadvr, and then dot, as in dot. Yes, you know dots, don't you? .com, VR. Uploadvr.com. Right. I get silly here. I'm just trying to avoid not crashing again. Right. Finally, I think we're catching up with ourselves. Chris Milk on storytelling. Chris Milk has a company of his own called Within. They're responsible for lots of the 360 sort of content you find on various headsets and whatever. I know in Oculus Go, which is the lightweight Oculus thing, there's a version of Within. And this actually is at digitalbodies.net. So it's digital bodies, as you see on screen, but all one word, .net. And it's a little interview on storytelling in AR and VR. It goes on fair old way down the page here, but as I said, I'm avoiding scrolling today because scrolling seems to be synonymous with crashing. So moving on. Rolls-Royce and Quasar Airways are trialing a new virtuality training tool. Now, this is the point where we disappeared on the previous broadcast, so fingers crossed. Okay, you find this at virtualrealitytimes.com. Now, virtual reality times is what you think it is. All of them are full words, i.e., virtual reality times, but squashed together into one word. .com. Um, this doesn't mean you can go on Quasar Airways and test out virtuality. It simply means that their engineers and support staff are being trained in VR, rather like the pilots were probably trained in VR with the old flight simulators. Apparently, it's a more reliable and thorough way of training engineers for Rolls-Royce and Quasar than the real world. So that by the time they get their hands on the real thing, they should know what they're doing. One actually tends to hope so. So there we are. Bit of news there. That's at virtualitytimes.com.
Made it through.
This, sorry?
We made it through that article.
We made it in the article. Okay, we've got a few more to come though, so
Right, right.
fingers crossed. Right, VR Scout has another, vrscout.com again. There has another article here. Preserving historical landmarks in VR should be a priority. Um, James and I were just talking before we came on air about how both of us was the idea of cutting down on car travel and pollution and stuff was one of the convincing things about VR or virtuals for both of us. The other thing I must say I've been very keen on is preserving. I love historical rebuildings and things that you can see. And although this isn't in this particular article, proof of the pudding this week was when the fire broke out at Notre Dame in Paris, and there've actually been several
Oh
web
yeah,
posts
yeah.
indicating places you can go to view view Notre Dame in VR. Um, since I don't think I've got those open here, but if you search for Notre Dame on the web, you'll probably find them. The three that was, one I think was a headset one, another was web VR and whatever. On top of which, there are some, things like the Second Life blogs have been going on about bills of Notre Dame in Second Life, which Hamlet All reported that actually, as usual, all the crowds turned up, mourning at the Notre Dame site in Second Life during and after the fire.
Hmm.
Um, However, I've got to admit, if you look at the Notre Dame in Second Life, it actually doesn't really look like the Notre Dame. It's a sort of cardboard cutout version. Made of prims. Not knocking it, But it's there are some actually very serious 3D renderings of Notre Dame on the web, and of course now that counts as preservation because although it's going to be rebuilt, it's obviously not going to be quite exactly the
Quite
same.
the same, yeah.
So yeah, so that's and all is good. Right. Um, so let's oops. Ensuring history survives using modern day technology. I'm going to put that away. There. This is at vrscout.com, and I'm going to put it away really quickly because I accidentally scrolled. I accidentally scrolled. Help. Right. 91. Well, this is 9 basically, but the I is spells as the numeral 1. Splinter Mind. Essentially a Blade Runner VR, and it looks great. Well, actually, that's why I included this link. It does look rather great, and I like Blade Runner. It's heading to VR headsets this year. It's a narrative-driven cyberpunk detective game set in the year 2099. And as a player, you investigate several mysterious murders touring the seedy underbelly of the dark future. So this has got it all. It's got cyberpunk. It's got Agatha Christie. Well, it's some kind of murder anyway. It's a detective job. Yeah. If it looks great too, could be great fun.
Hmm.
Find out more about this one at uploadvr.com. Yes, again, the article called in the oh nine the splintered mind. Yeah, uploadvr.com. Putting this one away. Treading nervously back through my tabs. Walking on the moon in VR with Lunatic. Now, whoever invented that name is clearly a serious name. But
I can see it working,
if
sure.
you call if you call something lunatic, I mean, and it's meant to be taken seriously. I don't know really whether the lunar comes from the moon, of course, and tick comes from ticking all boxes or something. I don't know. Anyway, few people have actually walked on the lunar surface. That's the moon, actually, and it says 12 to be exact. Gosh golly, I thought it was more like a million. Never mind. Lunatic is your chance to follow in their footsteps and walk on the moon in VR. It's been 50 years since the first landing, and despite 9 commercial projects, many more before other. What? Right, typos galore there by the look of it.
Mm.
Okay, Turner Prize winning artist Anthony Gormley and Yale professor Priya Natarajan brought the scientific perspective to this, and you can see it in this. Whoever wrote this hasn't done a grammar check. Um, I'm not going to. I'm not going to read this.
All
Let
right.
me see. There's a link here to an interview in another site called Dezen, Dezeen, and they are actually talking further about that. Basically, from what I gather, I haven't been into this, but from what I gather, it's a kind of photographs and video and stuff has been sort of stitched together to make what is probably more of a 360 video experience than a virtual reality experience. Virtual reality in these occasions tends to be the name, applied to the hardware you view them in, even if you can view them on a desktop. So I don't know. I don't want to scroll this for you. I'm tempted, but I'm going to avoid it. You want to go to digitalbodies.net and look for an article called Virtual Reality Walking on the Moon and with lunatic, of course.
Hmm.
Right. So, why not just Google lunatic? That'd be fun. Right. Um, Mind VR. Oh, they're all great for names here, actually. This is improved virtuality for elderly using Vive Focus headsets. As you can see, there's a elderly gentleman in the seat there. You can't tell that. Well, yes, you can tell, can't you? You can't
Hmm.
tell that clearly because he's wearing a bloody what's it helmet. Um, covering him up. I see strands of white hair, so I think we can assume it's an elderly chap. Um, and Mind VR, basically, they're just developing content, really, more than anything else, that they think will appeal to the elderly. Um, Holidays they never had. Can they, be taken to places before. The one they've given as an example here is watching a Frank Sinatra show. Oh, sorry,
Oh.
Frank Sinatra tribute show. So I
Hmm.
think Frank Sinatra, as well as those iconic performers, has actually been recreated as a hologram anyway, as like Nat King Cole and a number of others have. But apparently, the Mind VR is a tribute show, so presumably it's somebody who fancies themselves imitating Frank Sinatra crooning, a bit like the Elvis Presley uh, clones.
Mm.
Well, not clones. What do you call them? Impersonators. That's it.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, that kind of thing. So I thoroughly approve of this. I may be sounding a bit cynical, but my VR, it's spelled MYND VR. It's nice to see a company actually focusing on content with a clear demographic in mind there. It's probably quite an important demographic. I'm rather averse to these headsets at the moment, but who knows? In 10 years' time, they may convince me to live in one. As long as it's got a feeding tube and it's comfortable, who
Right.
knows?
Right.
Right. So, find out more about this at uploadvr.com. And no tab bites the dust. Oh, the less tabs, the less likely I am to crash, I think.
Mm.
Okay, well, this is a bit of an obvious one, but it's at Virtual Reality Times. Virtual Reality Times. Three words there, squashed together as one. Virtualrealitytimes.com. Full wording, of course. And you can see the logo there, but it says VR Times, whereas underneath you'll see it says Virtual Reality Times, and that long version is the one you want. Augmented reality, yeah, well, the next obvious step for porn. Gosh, what's that? Whatever it is, it's something called NSFW-ish.
Mm.
Huh. I'll have to
Not
investigate.
safe for work.
Yes, all right,
Oh,
yeah, I
okay.
know.
Right.
I'll pretend. I'll pretend I'm an innocent and don't quite understand what all this is about.
All
Now,
this
why would
internet.
one to buy that thing? Yeah, yes, the things in question being photographs of VHS tapes, so go figure. Yeah, they do make the point that the sexual services industry, one way or another, which they always have to call the porn industry, tends to lead the way with a whole load of things. And the pictures of the 1970s, which is 50 years ago when they were dominating the VHS market. Um, if you don't know what VHS is, oh, lordy, lordy. I'm not going to tell you, but I do have a lot
How,
of them around.
if you
Not
don't know
not
what
porn.
VHS is, how fortunate you are.
Yeah, probably. I've got hundreds of damn things. I refuse to throw them out, and
Yeah.
I never find the time to digitize them, which is really a bit of a pay in. Right. Anyway, what I was going to say, well, I'll go avoid scrolling. I have no idea what's beneath the
Well, you
scroll
can try
anyway.
scrolling. I think you can try it.
Yeah, who knows what's under this scroll? It might be something shocking.
Hmm.
Oh yes, there we go. Well, they've discreetly pixelated the bit.
It's very
the action,
small on screen.
the action stations.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And here again, very small. I know I'm not going to blow them up. Right for you. Yeah, this is basically looking at the AR thing. I mean, obviously 360 VR, like the woman at the bottom here with her legs up in the air. I mean, you can pretty much imagine what she's posing for there. But in VR, you basically see an avatar or an actress in 360 and real close up and can move around them at any angle. And I was going to say enter at any angle, but that might be misinterpreted. Um, Whatever. The somewhat cruder thing above, which appears to be upside down. The lettering. They've obviously censored out what's going on there. I guess the idea is that one of the partners would be real and the other would be either simulated real or kind of avatar but projected into mixed reality. Um, that's interesting. Obviously, that is, that looks like two avatars misbehaving in the real world, doesn't it? Because the background is clearly the real world. I don't know what anybody who was happening to walk down the street there and passed by would have seen. if they didn't have kit on, maybe they'd have seen nothing, or if they'd have only seen one of the parties. I don't really know. Presumably, the people purveying these things probably check out their locations beforehand to make sure the public aren't around. Anyway, that's that. You can find out virtual reality times, the long word again, and augmented reality is the future of porn or something. Right, it's a nice looking, happy bunch of people. There's quite a lot of them. Creative XR funds 20 UK studios working on new VR AR projects. In other words, those are not all from one company. They do actually all happen to be from Britain. Yay! Blah blah. But basically, it's all to do with funding, and Creative XR is actually a source of funds, and they're currently funding over 20 UK studios that are actually working in AR and VR. And the initiative put together by Digital Catapult and the Arts Council of England. And the program revealed the 2019 recipients this week. There is more about that to be found, of course, so you can go to uploadvr.com and you, in your own time, can scroll that article. Because I sure ain't going to do it today. Oh God, I'm so rude to you, aren't I? But tough. Would you rather I didn't scroll and didn't crash, or the opposite? There you
Difficult
go.
choice, right?
Difficult choice indeed. I know my what choice though. Right, New World Notes here. This is NWN. It's an abbreviation. NWN for New World Notes. Dot blogs plural dot com. As in gone. So nwn.blogs.com. And James Wadner, as usual, this is Wednesday's post. He's talking about something called Power Beats VR. Um, and it's just one, I suppose he's promoting it in a way, though. Um, I don't know whether he's paid for it or not, but yeah, there are other things of this ilk. But basically, the article here is suggesting that virtual reality's killer app, or the most likely killer app, is our fitness apps. In other words, getting your actual real life body into shape. I mean, this goes back to the idea of cycling through the countryside on an exercise bike with an iPad in front of you, or maybe a headset on. Um, Anything that keeps your body going while you're in VR is obviously considered to be sort of quite a good thing. Um, I think the big problem here is, even as that picture shows, is that most people. So here, if you go to a gym which is VR equipped and got massive space to move, but most people, even in an empty spare room, if you're in VR and you can't see where you're going, those four walls come up to you pretty quickly. And to do running and stuff like that, is not really that practical in a confined space, and an average room is pretty confined. You can get around it, of course, by having exercise bikes or running on a treadmill and various things like that, but often those things are almost as expensive as kitting the whole room out for VR anyway. Um, yeah, I tend to think of it as bikes and treadmills and stuff. As people have exercise bikes in their houses. I don't, but I'm an old slub, aren't I? I go out for walks. That's enough, and I climb stairs. That's more than enough. But sort of. You know, it's good to keep fit, and for somebody who's say got an exercise bike in their apartment anyway, then using it with a headset, or indeed just something like an iPad propped up so you can, feel like you're, pedaling to somewhere as opposed to nowhere, is kind of good stuff. So anyway, that article's from Hamlet or New World Notes, nwn.blogs.com. Right, now we are coming to Virtual Reality Dash Newsnet, not to be confused with the one without a dash. So it's the long words, virtual reality, but squashed together as one, then a dash, and then news, and then a dot, and then net. Virtual Reality News.net. And a new study shows how AR and VR can enhance brand perception. Right. All commerce here, isn't it really? This is probably mostly driven at brands and things, telling them to get into the VR thing to promote their brand. Um, Somebody I read somewhere once, or it's a few years ago, that sort of um, it was some kind of article that was talking about brands, and they were saying, get on this new VR thing, this 360 video thing. This is the breaking thing. If your brand is worth your salt, you ought to be on this, and then people will get to know you. It's a bit like 30 years ago. Every brand was being told you've got to get this thing called a web page because it's the in thing. And of course, all these brands, got their designers to cough up posters, and they posted the poster on the web without any links or anything, and said, "Hey, we got a web page,"
Hmm.
not realizing what on earth they were doing. And I think, it's like brands that entered walled gardens like Second Life early on. They sort of thought it was the place to be, and indeed it is a sort of living high street. But it's very easy to overestimate the potential audience, and also just when a brand moved into Second Life, it wasn't as simple as creating a web page. You've got to learn the environment and the way people behave in it to understand how to advertise. So anyway, this of course is a study, and we all know what studies are like. They're paid for by other people who have other agendas too. Um, yeah, maybe a bit worthy of a bit of a read here. It really deserves a much longer article, of actually probably a book, for people, who want to understand the various aspects of VR and AR and how they can apply them to brand perception. Because brand means almost anything these days. You could be talking about a hospital or a school or a sugar bar or yeah, I don't know what,
A
arguably
personal
every
brand.
person. I was just going to say, James,
Yeah.
so arguably in the modern world, every individual is a brand of their own
Right.
too, and
Right.
you cultivate your brand. My brand is Mal Burns, and Mal Burns, and Mal Burns writer, and Mal Burns again, and well, I'm not a brand at all, in my opinion, but the modern 21st century thinking says I am.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm promoting my brand by doing this show. I'm promoting my brand by doing my newsfeed. Personally, you're just getting me faffing about, but being useful, I hope. But brand, well, I don't know. Brand. Do I want to be a brand? Well, I'd rather be a brand than branded. Put it that way. There's a good one. I don't like labels. I actually I don't tattoos or brands either. But moving on, moving on. I think that was a rabbit hole moving. A rabbit hole
A small
moment
one. A
stirring.
little one.
A little one was stirring there, so I
Yep.
resist. Right. Now, lo and behold, this company called Microsoft is apparently making VR better for those with vision problems. This product called Seeing VR gives you 12 tools to help with low vision. Um, Now, you know, some of us have vision problems and stuff, ranging from standard eyesight stuff to color blindness and stuff. We do all usually have computers and devices we work with that actually allow us to calibrate our monitors. And there are plenty of things that allow us to add color slants and stuff to our monitors. Just, um, unless we're working in print where we want to monitor something that's accurate to CMYK color or whatever, like that, we're normally most of us happy with calibrating our monitor and graphics card if necessary to see things how we like to see them, or we make our pillar box red so as it looks pillar box red to us, we're not too bothered about how it looks to others. Um, Arguably, if you're building a virtual pillar box, you do want to actually try to mix the colours to be a conventional pillar box red, so it's because it is a shared experience. But generally speaking, from accessibility point of view, we just treat things the way we want them. And I have to admit, I've been looking at that, like these little pictures that Microsoft show about recoloring and creating guidelines, highlighting and stuff like this. This doesn't really seem. Firstly, I'm not quite sure exactly where it works. I mean, presumably it's meant to be in some kind of free VR environment, but it doesn't really seem to be much more than a kind of. Well, I'm not even sure it's calibration. It's more filtering. If you want to make something increase the brightness in VR, then increase the brightness. But I mean, that's not. Um, and contrast. I mean, these there's nothing new in this. It's my feeling. Um, I will go down here. Microsoft researchers are trying to solve that problem with this toolkit, and the toolkit is designed for Unity VR developments to help those with low vision. Again, I'm not quite sure what low vision is. I mean, there's um, 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 what's it there? Close up eyesight. There's far eyesight and stuff like that. I'm not quite sure what it is. Do you know, James, what low vision is?
I don't. I couldn't
No,
say.
it's not nearsighted, farsighted, or just Microsoft Weird Vision.
just less than optimal. I'm not familiar with that term.
Yeah.
It just from the images that you see on the page, it looks like it might be things like high contrast. The things in
Oh
Windows that
yeah.
help with accessibility.
Yeah. I mean, one's called contrast lens. Yeah, I mean, which is high contrast. Edge enhancements is like trace edges.
Yep. Yep.
Object description is like text tags. But there's nothing new in this. Um, the
Other than it being
I
in VR.
yeah, well, it's a plug-in for Unity, but
Yeah.
okay. Well, yeah, I'm not enough interested, or I have problems with eyesight and stuff, but I don't really see. If it's something you plug into Unity when creating something, if anything, it'd be like that paperclip thing of Microsoft. The the customization would just get in the way. And if it's an invisible customization, then it might be, although it might be the right thing for one person, it might be the wrong thing for 99 people. So I just don't know, to be honest. Um, anyway, it was a conference in Glasgow. People were talking about this. So there you go. And yes, there's a demo there of seeing VR. I'm not going to play it. I don't want to do anything today. It's scary. Right. VRscouts.com. This is just a general overview. Nice, pretty picture on this site, actually. The current state of the VR AR patent landscape. So, we've all heard of this device and that device and t'other device. Um, but this actually looks at all the different kind of display technologies, haptic devices, and everything else, and just look at them from a patent perspective, like who's got the patent and what is patented. So it obviously doesn't include things that haven't got patents yet or just being suggested. Um, but if you're considering using any of these things, it might be a useful article to check on who owns the patent on the device that you're hoping your viewers will use or whatever. So, overview article there. Quite a good one. Get rid of the Microsoft article. Right, another recent post from Hypergrid Business. Actually, it has nothing to do with the hypergrid. Uh, Maria's going to have to do something about this name, although, of course, it's very, talking of brands, she's got a very valuable one here. This actually is a post by somebody, Timika Gobb, who's presumably promoting this product. Everest VR. Um, Basically, it's a 360 video kind of thing based on a dome. It's 8K resolution, which means it will be very realistic indeed. Um, I don't know. Um, I can't judge by that photo. It certainly seems that they're on a piece of flat ground, and the Mount Everest is like a kind of couple of hills in front of them. It doesn't quite look right to me. Whether this is a genuine long immersive climb of Mount Everest in reality, in virtual reality, if you see what I mean, or not. It's very hard to tell. But you can read about this at hypergridbusiness.com. Right, now moving along. Just need to alter a little thing at the side of my screen here. This is from the Science blog. It's blog.sign.space, but it's sign space is actually the company is sign.space. So it's blog.sign, S-I-N-E dot space as in that that sky thing for the stars. Right. Um, and this is their creative blog. It's a creator spotlight of somebody called Temenos 3D. This, if you're looking for the actual link to this is on the Metaworld News Twitter feed, whereas we have just specific virtual immersive world stuff here. That's a picture of her avatar, and she's a clothing skin retail designer. And you can read more about it at the permalink on the SciSpace blog here. Right, let's hit another one. Okay, well, it may be a bit late or it may not, but again, from the Science-Based blog, which is blog.science.space, celebrate Easter with these egg-sighting events. And it's mostly DJs playing in various clubs on that island. The only other thing I would add here very briefly is there was a post this week at roadtovr.com, and it's their take on the news we revealed last week about high fidelity changing its focus. And as you can see, I think it's got last week's Zoom setting on it or something. Motor VR sitting. Anyway, this actually was on Monday or Tuesday this week, but it's just Motor VR's own particular take on what's happening. We did actually have quite a few last week, telling you. Um, telling you more about this anyway. So it's a few. There's quite a lot of information here with quotes from Philip Rosedale and everything else. My apologies too, by the way, and to her if she's listening to this. I did mention something last week about having Caitlin from High Fidelity on this week, or at least on our own World Review show after this. And one way or the other, I haven't actually arranged it. So she doesn't. I always thought she had an OpenSim avatar, and she doesn't. And we need to set her up with one, or go to High Fidelity and do it in a quiet place. If we can find a quiet place in High Fidelity. This is something we will be discussing at further length as time goes by. Okay, well, I think I've got to the end of our stuff there. Indeed, I have.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm going to close the window. Tough shit. I can't go back now. But we do get a nice picture. We got a nice new background picture on my desktop,
Oh
which
yeah.
moves. And if I could only make our logo appear on top of that, or something, it's got a nice one. Anyway, while we are talking, I am showing you that, and I'm also going to ask James if he's got any thoughts on all the shenanigans in those posts we've just seen.
No, no, I did appreciate the articles about, especially when the article you have mentioned about content for senior
Oh yeah, yeah,
experiences in VR, and it makes me reflect on the announcement from High Fidelity, and it seems like their focus would be trying to emphasize more content development while they work on the platform. Does that seem right?
yeah.
Which is,
I, I,
any
I,
platform needs that, right?
Yeah, I think they're doing two things. Basically, to put it simply, one is that they're refocusing on the desktop
Hmm.
because they don't consider the take up of headsets to be um, um, great enough and scaling enough for it to be a viable commercial proposition. I'm not saying they will switch off VR, but they want to focus on making things principally available on the desktop with VR as an option.
Hmm. Yeah.
But also, I get the impression that they want to be known much more as a facilitator, kind of operating something that's more like the web, where you can register domain names, and they give you the tools to build with and whatever. And just like I have here, really, where I have my own OpenSim server, which houses this studio and a big playground of my own. High Fidelity Sandbox is actually a server on your own computer.
Right.
And one thing they're cutting back on because of cost again is having public spaces.
Mhm.
High
Mhm.
Fidelity had a sort of town hall meeting place. It had an introductory place. It had a place called the Stop. It had a couple of clubs, all of which were not manned by users. They were actually provided by High Fidelity itself as different places for different kind of meetings. Now they've decided rather radically to delete all those spaces so that there are no public spaces left other than the public spaces created by users. So they're not against public spaces, they're all for them. But they believe that the platform should be providing the tools and that the user should be doing the building and the hosting. So they want to see more spaces. I don't know, it could be on Amazon's cloud or it could be on people's home computers if they've got one that's good enough,
Mhm.
actually running the servers for these domains. And you can pay a small fee to High Fidelity to get, like um, um, http://metaverse.metaworld as a like high fidelity name.
Mhm.
I did actually have one and never used this,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's expired since I finally figured out how I would be able to use it. But or you can keep it anonymous, where it's just an IP address, and you get your friends to log in, but the public users of Hi-Fi can't get to you, without knowing the domain name or domain IP. So I mean, it is actually a sort of total refocusing because it's getting away from the idea Second Life when it began, Linden Lab used to have town halls. They don't have them now. The Lindens appear on shows and things now and again, but basically it's a user-created world. High Fidelity runs in a very different way, but at the end of the day, it should really be the same thing. Users create, users sell, other users will buy, and maybe the places they go will be provided by other people, and there's nothing to actually stop somebody setting up a high fidelity server with masses of regions on it and actually rent those regions like people rent houses in Second Life. The only difference between Second Life and OpenSim and things like that and high fidelity is that there's no flat Earth concept. There's no map of continuous land. You can have
Right.
big areas and small areas, but they're effectively all in a mesh sphere. Same in science space. If you can imagine, yeah, imagine the globe of Earth behind me here, where I'm talking. Um, um, each world in high fidelity, and especially in science space, which is a Unity 3D thing, you've got to imagine that it's a hollow Earth and that the ground, the terrain, is like a flat sphere right in the middle. And then the terrain you walk on and use and stuff is sort of built in that sphere, and then the outside of the sphere, the dome, as it were, is a map of a skyscraper or whatever. You get to the edge of it, and no two spheres ever connect. You simply arrive at the edge of the sphere, whether it's a huge sphere with the Grand Canyon in it at real size scale, or whether it's a small sphere with just a house and a garden. When you get to the edge, you get to the edge, and you can make use of underneath the ground, of course, because that's in the lower half of the underneath the land in the globe, as it were. But that's kind of the way it works. So there's no concept of a flat land that like you had in Second Life, or we indeed have here in OpenSim. You've got to rig it to behave like that, and you can't just join one thing to another thing, if you see what I mean.
Yep.
You can take one apart and then rebuild it bigger, but you can't, um, there is just no flat Earth to it. In fact, there's not even a true round Earth because it's a plate in the middle of a round Earth. If it makes any sense,
Mhm.
does that make sense to you?
Sure. Yep.
Everybody's switching off. They don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. um, yeah. So I think it's a very good idea. I mean, they have a lot of venture capital, and but people are going to question where that venture capital goes to, and they've really got to put it into, um, they've got to feed it into resources that are, going to pay off. So the more advanced they can make their authoring and their facilitation, and the more unique they can make it, then presumably they're going to get people coming to them who want to do things. As far as I know, um, the High Fidelity has no, how should I say, commercial clients at the moment
Right.
in the
Yeah,
sense of
that's what I
major
was referring to because one of the comments that stood out to me was that high fidelity is not a chat room. It's not a
Yeah,
place to hang out and chat. They want more directed use, I think, of the platform.
yeah, I think so. I mean,
Yep.
it's like Second Life in a way. Second Life's not a game, but as we know, there are games in it. High Fidelity is not a chat room, but that doesn't stop you having a chat room in it. But that
Right,
chat
right.
room is not that chat room is not something
You,
that High Fidelity's management want to do.
right. You just need a business model on it.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you can, I mean, the obvious thing to do is build a library and then create your own chat room site within High Fidelity for book lovers, as a place to talk about books and maybe have certain books in that library. I don't know, but that's just off the top of my head.
Yep.
But maybe, maybe there would, you could rent books out virtually or give people access. There may be some economic model that even for just a home user would provide a bit of pocket money. A bit like Second Life, where people buy a bit of land and then put a few houses on it and sublet the houses. They don't make a full-time living, but maybe it pays half the money they have to pay for to Lindens each month. It helps supplement the cost of their hobby. So there are a lot of different kind of options there, and I quite like the notion that it's very much like the hypergrid here, where you can host your own region, small or large, and you can jump out from that to other places and then come back and retreat into it from other places. And High Fidelity's model very much allows for that. There's
Right,
no
right.
every instance is a world into itself, really, because of the thing I mentioned about the globe kind of thing. As opposed to flat land, but it's a sort of similar model. And I'm absolutely sure that Philip and High Fidelity want to be a kind of if you imagine that there's a commercial site called the hypergrid, which controls the domain names of any grids and how you move between them, I'm quite sure that Hyperfidelity would fancy itself as the domain host, as it were, for all worlds that actually use its technology. But even though those worlds may well be housed on other people's computers or in the cloud, they're providing the mechanics from jumping from one place to the other, just in the same way that the World Wide Web was, where you just type in an address and it takes you there.
All right.
Anyhow, that's your extra comments for the
That's my
week.
comment. That's
It's,
right.
it's surprising. You see, James asks a simple comment, asks me a simple question, and 20 rabbit holes later, he's got me to the end of it.
That's the
Okay.
the natural educator in you, I think.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know what our viewers think. I was always told I had a talent of taking something highly complex, which I don't really understand myself, and making it sound very simple for people.
Mm,
Using real world metaphors and
yep, yep.
simplistic sort of, not too techie talky. Anyway, okay, folks. Well, I'm finished with that, and we have actually got through the second run without crashing. The first run is now deleted, but you can obviously see this in replay throughout the week, which is how most of you actually access it. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Meanwhile, it's goodbye from. Oh, what the hell, him? I can't think of it.
Wow.
Well, I can't think of a new gag.
The old
So,
gag works fine, and it's
okay.
goodbye, but goodbye from him.
Okay, so from the two of us, have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you next one. Bye for now.